My husband slept with his boss, so I quietly stole her handsome husband instead. He is so amazing, I told her at the company's party while she stood there shaking with rage. The crystal chandeliers of the Charlotte Winter Corporate Gala cast a blinding light over the grand ballroom. I stood right in the center of the floor, my arm linked flawlessly through Lincoln's tailored suit sleeve. Across from us, Monica stared, paralyzed. The arrogant senior vice president who had spent months calling me a pathetic charity case was currently hyperventilating. Her designer champagne flute rattled against her diamond rings, spilling dark red wine onto the pristine white marble. Right beside her, Nathan, the man I had bankrolled and cooked for over the last 5 years, looked like he was going to vomit. The blood drained entirely from his face. They thought they were the apex predators. They thought they had cornered a quiet, obedient wife. They were wrong. To understand exactly how I triggered their financial annihilation, you have to understand the nightmare they put me through first. My name is Kaylee. I am 33 years old and I manage multi-million-dollar supply chains for a living. I track cargo shipments across the eastern seaboard, predict structural failures in transit routes, and spot financial discrepancies before they ever bleed into the quarterly reports. But for 5 years, the most catastrophic failure I ever encountered was sitting right on my own living room sofa. I had just finished a grueling 14-hour shift, the kind of day where your spine aches, your feet throb, and your eyes burn from staring at logistics spreadsheets. I paid the heavy mortgage on our Charlotte home. I paid the utility bills, the groceries, and the expensive tailored suits Nathan wore just to play the part of a hotshot corporate consultant. I unlocked the front door that night, desperate for silence. Instead, the smell of seared steak and loud, arrogant laughter hit me right in the chest. Nathan had invited 3 of his junior associates over for an impromptu dinner party just to show off his lifestyle. He never texted me. He simply expected me to walk in and cater his little performance. My hands shook from pure physical exhaustion. I walked straight into the kitchen to grab a stack of serving plates. My fingers slipped. The ceramic shattered violently against the hardwood floor. The loud crash killed the laughter in the next room instantly. Nathan stormed into the kitchen, his face twisted in rage. He ignored the broken glass. He grabbed my wrist. His fingers dug directly into my skin, squeezing so hard a sharp, blinding pain shot all the way up my arm. He shoved me backward, sending my shoulder crashing hard into the edge of the granite counter. "Are you crazy?" he hissed, his voice dropping to a toxic, venomous whisper. "You stumble in here and play the victim in front of my guests. You are so pathetic, it actually embarrasses me. Go upstairs and wash that cheap smell off you. Sometimes I have to use physical force just to knock some actual sense into your thick skull." I bit the inside of my cheek until the sharp taste of copper filled my mouth. I stared at the floor, forcing my breathing to stay even. The next morning, those red marks blossomed into a deep, ugly purple bruise. The skin was tender to the touch, a physical map of his fragile ego. I was standing in the kitchen pouring black coffee when my mother-in-law Briona walked through the back door. She always let herself in. She took one long look at my bruised wrist, rolled her eyes, and let out a heavy sigh. "A good wife knows how to read her husband's moods," Kaylee Briona said, casually stirring sugar into her cup. "Nathan is carrying the entire weight of this family. He is building an empire downtown. If he loses his temper, you just need to be more accommodating. Women today are too spoiled. You are holding my successful son back with your constant selfish whining." I gripped the edge of the porcelain sink. The urge to hurl the boiling coffee against the wall burned hot in my chest. I forced my hands to slowly open one finger at a time. I had $450,000 sitting in our savings account. That money was my blood, my sweat, and my endless 14-hour shifts. If I snapped now, Nathan would drag me through a brutal divorce and drain every single cent just to punish my defiance. I swallowed the rage burning in my throat. I nodded quietly. I let them both believe I was weak, broken, and entirely under their control. You can only run on black coffee, pure adrenaline, and sheer terror for so long before your organs start screaming. My collapse happened on a Tuesday. I was standing in the middle of a distribution warehouse holding a heavy clipboard and reviewing a delayed freight manifest. The concrete floor suddenly tilted sideways. A sharp, terrifying ringing pierced my ears. My vision tunneled into total, suffocating darkness. My knees hit the cold cement hard. I woke up hours later under harsh fluorescent hospital lights. A clear plastic tube pumped freezing saline directly into my severely dehydrated veins. A heart monitor beeped a steady, irritating rhythm right next to my head. The emergency room doctor stood over me, listing off a diagnosis of severe physical exhaustion, panic-induced stress, and dangerous dehydration. My first human instinct was pure naive desperation. I needed my husband. I needed the man I had married to walk through that door and tell me everything was going to be fine. I grabbed my cell phone off the plastic tray with shaking fingers and dialed his number. The line clicked open on the third ring. He answered, but he put me straight on speakerphone. The sharp clinking of heavy crystal glasses echoed through the speaker, followed immediately by the low, cruel sound of a woman laughing. It was Monica, his senior vice president, the apex predator of his corporate firm. "Oh, please," Monica purred, her voice dripping with disgust. "Your spectacular wife is using the fake hospital routine to get your attention again, Nathan. It is so utterly cheap. Tell the nurses to prescribe her heavy sedatives. A brilliant rising star like you needs an actual queen by his side, not a greasy, pathetic maid who constantly smells like cheap takeout and desperate anxiety. It honestly makes me sick." A tight, suffocating knot clamped down heavily on my windpipe. I gripped the phone, waiting for Nathan to defend me. I waited for him to explode, to hang up, to tell her she crossed a massive line. Instead, a sickeningly familiar chuckle vibrated through the speaker. "Stop blowing up my phone, Kaylee," he snapped, his tone thick with unearned arrogance. "I am busy securing a massive corporate merger. If you cannot even manage to stand on your own 2 feet, call a garbage truck to haul you home. I am building a monumental future for us, and your endless, pathetic whining is dragging me straight down to the absolute bottom." The call dropped. A flat, mechanical dial tone buzzed against my ear. They laughed at my weakness, unaware that their laughter was signing their own financial death warrants. The hot tears burning behind my eyes instantly dried up. The desperate, abused wife lying in that hospital bed died right there in the sterile emergency room. A freezing, highly calculated silence washed over my brain, shutting down the grief and replacing it with pure, tactical focus. In my profession, when a supplier becomes a toxic liability, you do not cry about the broken relationship. You cut the contract. You audit the damage. You eliminate the threat entirely. I pulled the thin, scratchy hospital blanket up to my chest and stared directly at the blank acoustic ceiling tiles. Nathan thought my quiet obedience meant total submission. He mistook my endless loyalty for stupidity. He forgot that I track microscopic discrepancies for a living. If someone moves a single unauthorized crate across the country, I know exactly where it went. Tracking a cheating, financially illiterate consultant was going to be the easiest, most devastating audit of my entire life. The moment I walked back into my house, the air felt toxic. Nathan was at the office. He left his tablet sitting right on the kitchen island. The screen glowed with an incoming notification. One tap and the truth flashed in high definition. It was an email thread with Monica. The subject line read, "Penthouse Deposit." My heart hammered against my ribs as I scrolled through the messages. They were planning to wire $450,000, my exact life savings, into a Delaware shell company to secure a $2,500,000 luxury condo in uptown Charlotte. Monica's final message made my blood run ice cold. She told him to drain the joint accounts on Friday. By the time the Midwestern maid hired a lawyer, she wrote, the money would be untouchable. She planned to leave me with the massive tax debt. I packed a leather briefcase with printed copies of the emails, bank statements, and every single digital footprint they carelessly left behind. I drove straight to the financial district. I needed the one man who possessed enough artillery to bypass Monica's corporate legal team, Lincoln, her billionaire husband. We met in the private back room of an exclusive cigar lounge. The room smelled of rich tobacco and aged bourbon. I slid the heavy manila folder across the mahogany table. Lincoln opened the file. His dark eyes scanned the document, stopping on the printed texts where Monica mocked my hospitalization. The muscles in his jaw locked tight. He closed the folder, the thick cardboard slapping loudly against the wood. She was using his firm's infrastructure to hide the stolen capital, he stated, his voice, a low, dangerous rumble. We shared a silent, mutual understanding. We skipped the grief entirely. We went straight to war. I am a supply chain manager. The golden rule of logistics is simple. If you want to expose a rat, you control the timeline. Give a thief too much time and they hide their tracks perfectly. You have to apply massive pressure. You have to force them into a frantic, sloppy sprint. That afternoon, I laid the bait. I left a thick, forged financial document sitting directly in the center of my home office desk. The bold red text on the top page clearly stated that my $450,000 was being transferred into an irrevocable, closed-end bond by exactly 8 o'clock Saturday morning. Once that transfer cleared, the funds were legally locked for 10 years. Nathan took the bait immediately. That evening, I watched his shadow freeze outside my office door. He crept inside. He read the file. I could practically hear his pulse skyrocketing through the drywall. The timeline was completely destroyed. To steal my savings, he and Monica had to execute the massive wire transfer before Saturday morning. They were forced to pull the trigger on Friday night, right in the middle of the winter corporate gala. While they frantically scrambled to adjust their schedule, Lincoln and I finalized the real trap. We did not waste time with administrative red tape or endless banking forms. Lincoln utilized his executive authority to hijack the routing numbers for Monica's fake shell company quietly. We converted their intended destination into a monitored, automated fraud alert system. The second the stolen money hit that account, the system was programmed to blast the IP addresses, the forged receipts, and the embezzlement proof directly to federal authorities and the entire board of directors instantly. The anticipation over the next 48 hours felt electric. Nathan walked around our house humming, intoxicated by his own fake brilliance. He picked out his tailored tuxedo, bragging about how Friday night would change his career forever. I ironed his collar. I smiled. The trap was set, the tripwire was pulled tight, and they were walking blindly into a high-speed wood chipper. The heavy brass doors of the grand ballroom swung open. I stepped onto the polished floor wearing a floor-length emerald silk gown. The Charlotte corporate elite buzzed around the champagne towers. I spotted them immediately. Monica held court near the VIP tables, dripping in diamonds. Nathan stood beside her, holding her drink like an obedient servant. Monica caught the flash of emerald green. Her eyes narrowed into sharp, hostile slits. She handed her glass to a junior partner and marched directly toward me, dragging an anxious Nathan behind her. A circle of curious executives naturally formed around us. Sharks always gather when they smell blood in the water. She stopped inches from my face. She tipped her crystal flute forward. A splash of dark red wine slashed directly across the front of my silk gown. "Oops," Monica purred, her voice carrying loudly to the surrounding board members. "I honestly thought you were the cleaning staff. Grab a rag and mop this up, you pathetic Midwestern charity case. You do not belong here." Nathan flinched. He looked at the powerful executives staring at us, terrified for his own reputation. He grabbed my elbow, his fingers digging in hard. He hissed through his teeth, demanding I stop embarrassing him and go hide in the bathroom right now. I pulled a crisp white handkerchief from my clutch. I dabbed the wet silk locking eyes with the apex predator. A cold, razor-sharp smile spread across my face. I held my ground. The crowd suddenly parted. Lincoln strode into the center of the circle. He bypassed his wife entirely. He stepped right to my side and wrapped his heavy, warm arms securely around my waist. The physical claim shocked the entire room into total silence. "I can clean this wine in 5 minutes," I said, my voice ringing with crystal clarity. "But you will never wash off a $2 million embezzlement warrant, Monica." Nathan panicked. The fake deadline from my forged document burned in his brain. He thought he was out of time. His thumb frantically swiped across his smartphone screen, hidden in his palm, hitting the transfer button for my $450,000. He thought he was securing his future. He pulled the tripwire perfectly. The trap snapped shut. 30 cell phones belonging to the entire board of directors erupted in a synchronized, deafening chime. Pockets buzzed. Screens illuminated the dim ballroom. The executives looked down at the automated fraud alerts. They read the offshore routing numbers, the forged receipts, and the exact IP address tracing straight back to Monica's department. The arrogant sneer melted completely off Monica's face. Her chest heaved violently. Pure, raw terror blew her pupils wide open. Cold sweat beaded along her hairline. She looked at the faces of the billionaires surrounding her. She found no mercy. She was suffocating under the crushing weight of their furious, disgusted glares. Nathan looked from his phone to the board members. The reality of his absolute ruin fractured his mind. His habitual rage took over. He bared his teeth and lunged directly at me, raising his fist to strike. He never made it. Lincoln gave a single sharp nod. Two massive security guards materialized from the shadows. They grabbed Nathan by the collar of his custom tuxedo and slammed him face first into the freezing marble floor. The sickening crack of bone hitting stone echoed through the room. Nathan squirmed under their heavy boots, whining like a cornered rat. The chief executive officer stepped out from the circle. His face was a mask of pure volcanic fury. He commanded them terminated, effective immediately, his voice lethal and quiet. He announced his security team was escorting them to the loading dock and the federal authorities were already waiting. Lincoln pulled me closer. We stood together untouched, watching the absolute slaughter of the empire they tried to build on my back. The fallout hit with the brutal, unforgiving speed of a freight train. Within 24 hours, the corporate machine erased them from the map. Lincoln permanently froze every single joint asset trust and commercial lease attached to Monica's name. Without his billions to shield her, she was left entirely exposed to the wolves. Federal investigators raided her executive suite the following Monday morning. The woman who wore heavy diamonds and demanded absolute perfection was stripped of her passport and her dignity. She was left sitting in a cold interrogation room, facing decades in federal prison for wire fraud and massive corporate embezzlement. Nathan met an equally humiliating end. The consulting industry operates on strict reputation, and word of his spectacular betrayal spread like wildfire. He was instantly blacklisted from every firm in the city. With his bank accounts empty and multiple pending charges for financial fraud and attempted assault, his luxury lifestyle evaporated overnight. The arrogant husband who constantly demanded custom-tailored shirts was forced to rent a filthy, roach-infested motel room on the extreme outskirts of the city. He was sleeping on a stained mattress wearing the exact same suit he was arrested in. He had nothing left, but my audit was not entirely finished. I had one final loose end to sever. I drove to my mother-in-law's house early Tuesday morning. Brionna sat in her floral armchair sipping herbal tea, completely oblivious to the weekend's massacre. She looked at my casual jeans and smirked. She stated Nathan had a very important meeting today, her tone dripping with its usual toxic condescension. She asked if I should not be at home, making sure his suits were perfectly pressed, telling me I really needed to try harder to keep up with him. I cut her off by pulling a thick stack of papers from my bag and dropping them heavily onto her glass coffee table. The stack contained every single canceled check for her rent, her medical bills, and her utility payments that I had personally funded for the last 5 years. Right next to the bills, I dropped the front-page article from the local business journal detailing Nathan's scandalous termination and impending criminal trial. "Your brilliant empire-building son is going to federal prison," I told her, my voice perfectly level. "I am officially cutting off your funding. Let us see if he can pay your rent from a concrete cell." Brionna stared at the photograph of Nathan in handcuffs. Her smug arrogance melted into trembling panic. She reached for my arm, begging me to help them. I stepped backward out of her reach and walked out the front door. Her desperate wailing echoed down the street, fading as I started my engine and drove away. The justice system moves slowly, but it is merciless. 9 months after the gala, a federal judge's gavel finalized the destruction of their empire. I sat in the gallery watching the final act of their pathetic play. Monica was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for embezzlement and wire fraud, plus $2,400,000 in restitution. Standing in a shapeless gray jumpsuit and steel cuffs without her designer gowns, she looked incredibly small and old. Charlotte's elite social circles had already erased her existence. Nathan was sentenced to 4 years in state prison. When the judge read his sentence, his knees gave out. He collapsed, sobbing and begging for a second chance. His desperate eyes searched the gallery and locked onto mine. I offered him nothing. I just stared back with the cold silence of a woman who had successfully exterminated a parasite. Brionna, the ultimate enabler, faced reality too. Without my paycheck, she was evicted within 3 months. She packed her belongings into trash bags and relocated to a rundown apartment, completely cut off from the lifestyle she believed she was entitled to. 4 months later, I walked out to my mailbox. Nestled between business magazines was a thin envelope stamped with the State Correctional Facility's seal. The messy handwriting was undeniably Nathan's. Inside was a 3-page letter, a masterpiece of narcissistic manipulation. He took no accountability. He blamed corporate pressure and claimed Monica manipulated his ambition. He reminded me of our wedding vows, wrapping his desperate plea for commissary money in the hollow language of lost love. A year earlier, a letter like that would have shattered me. I would have spiraled into guilt, wondering if I owed him forgiveness. But standing in my kitchen, reading his pathetic excuses, my heart rate didn't even elevate. I felt profoundly indifferent. I walked to my home office and fed the letter directly into the paper shredder, letting the steel blades chew his manipulation to pieces. I didn't reply. I tossed the envelope, poured a fresh cup of coffee, and went back to work. The contrast between my suffocating past and my tranquil present is breathtaking. I no longer walk on eggshells to avoid triggering unprovoked temper tantrums. I bought a beautiful property paid for entirely by the success of my booming logistics firm. I share it with Lincoln. Forged in the fires of mutual betrayal, our relationship is built on total, uncompromising respect. We are a true, chosen family. My mornings begin with quiet moments on the patio. We drink coffee and discuss global markets and shared investments. Lincoln views my intelligence as an asset, not a threat to his ego. He never asks me to shrink myself so he can feel taller. He clears the path and watches me run. The chaos and gaslighting are gone, replaced by a deep, unshakable peace. Looking back, the psychology of the people who tried to destroy me is glaringly obvious. Narcissists like Nathan and Monica operate on a predictable playbook. They target people with loyalty, empathy, and a strong work ethic. They abuse us, not because we are weak, but because we possess the exact strength and stability they lack. They use our resources to build their pedestals, then look down on us from the heights we financed. And they rely entirely on the silence of enablers like Breonna, the bystanders who watch the psychological violence happen, who see the bruises, and who tell the victim to simply try harder. Enablers are the invisible architects of abuse. They protect the monster because confronting the truth would disrupt their own comfortable, subsidized reality. Surviving them, and ultimately dismantling them, taught me 3 critical, undeniable rules for life. Rule number 1. Blind loyalty is a massive liability. Blood marriage certificates and years of shared history do not automatically make someone your family. Loyalty must be a two-way street, paved with mutual respect and consistent action. Never, under any circumstances, use your career, your finances, or your physical health as a stepping stone for someone who refuses to walk right beside you. If you are building an empire for a partner who only wants to keep you locked in the basement, you are not being a supportive spouse. You are funding your own captivity. Rule number 2, real power is completely silent. We are taught that strength looks like screaming matches, breaking plates, and throwing childish temper tantrums in the middle of a kitchen. But rage is just a tool of the weak and the panicked. True, undeniable power is quiet. It is observing the betrayal without tipping your hand. It is gathering irrefutable data, locking down your assets, and waiting patiently in the shadows for the exact perfect moment to strike. When you remove emotion from the battlefield and replace it with pure, calculated logic, you become entirely untouchable. Rule number 3. Beware the bystander. The most dangerous person in a toxic dynamic is not always the abuser screaming in your face. Sometimes it is the quiet enabler sitting in the corner, sipping their tea, watching you bleed, and telling you that the pain is actually your own fault. You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, but you are also allowed to completely sever ties with the people who watch you get hurt and do absolutely nothing to stop it. Trust is earned, it is never owed. You do not have to wait until you are broken in a hospital bed hooked up to a saline drip to finally realize your own worth. You do not have to accept the role of the silent, suffering background character in someone else's delusional fantasy. The moment you stop directing your incredible endurance toward saving people who secretly hate you and start directing it toward saving yourself, you become an unstoppable force of nature. Have you ever exhausted your entire soul trying to build a foundation for someone who only wanted to see you crumble? Have you ever had to look a narcissist in the eye and take your power back? Share this story if you believe in the absolute lying, justice of a perfectly executed checkmate, and tell me in the comments below. How did you finally draw the line and walk away? I am Kaylee, and I am free.